I don't think most people will ever understand what it feels like to give 2 years of your life to something no one else even notices. 2 years of staring at the same glowing screen until your eyes burn, living off cheap takeout and lukewarm coffee, telling yourself over and over that this sacrifice will be worth it someday. That was my life. My role wasn't glamorous, and it didn't come with applause, but I poured myself into it like it was the only thing that gave me purpose. I can still picture the office late at night, empty except for me. The hum of the air conditioner was the only sound, the overhead lights already shut off by the cleaning staff. My desk lamp glowed over scattered papers and sticky notes, my laptop fan spinning like it was on the edge of burning out, kind of like me. I told myself, this is what commitment looks like. This is what success is built on. And for a while, I believed it. Flashbacks sneak in when I think about it now. Like the time I missed my niece's birthday because I was knee-deep in deadlines. Or the countless family dinners where my chair sat empty because I was just finishing up a few things. At first, my family tried to understand. They'd smile and say, he's working hard for his future. But over time, I noticed the disappointment in their eyes, like they were losing me to this invisible machine I kept feeding. Still, I felt proud. Proud of the late nights, proud of how much I was giving, even when it hurt. Because somewhere deep down, I thought all that grind would define me in a good way. That one day I'd look back and say, yeah, it was tough, but look at what it built. For a while, I lived off promises. It's funny how a few words, this will change the company, or you're onto something big, can keep a person running on empty for months. Every time the owner leaned over my desk, glanced at my screen, and gave me that half smile, I felt like I was finally being seen. Like maybe all those sleepless nights weren't just disappearing into a void. There were these little moments that carried me through. A colleague once walked past and said, "Man, you're a machine. I don't know how you do it." I laughed it off, but inside, that compliment felt like fuel. Another time, the owner clapped me on the back after a presentation and said, "This is exactly the direction we need." Those small doses of recognition felt like oxygen when I was drowning, that I convinced myself it was only a matter of time before my effort paid off. Maybe a promotion, maybe even a partnership offer, something that proved my sacrifices were building toward a future. I'd even let myself daydream about it during those endless nights. I'd imagine walking into a room and finally being acknowledged not just as another employee, but as the guy who built the backbone of the company's next big leap. In hindsight, I realized how desperate I was for that validation. How much I wanted someone to look me in the eye and say, "You matter. This matters." At the time, though, it felt real. The little nods, the quiet compliments, the way people seemed impressed, it was enough to keep me going. But if I'd looked closer, I might have noticed the cracks. The way those promises were always vague. The way the owner's "thank you" never came with anything more than words. I ignored the red flags because hope is easier to live on than doubt. And back then, I was surviving on hope alone. That I'll never forget the moment everything unraveled. 2 years of my life, gone in the span of a sentence and a keystroke. It was an ordinary morning, coffee in hand, headphones in, trying to drown out the buzz of the office while I pulled up my work. I remember the way the cursor blinked on the screen, waiting for me to open the files that had become my second home. But when I clicked, nothing was there. Empty. Every folder, every document I had painstakingly built, gone. At first, I thought it was a glitch. My stomach twisted, but I told myself, it's fine. Tech hiccups happen. Then I asked the owner. I still hear his voice, casual, almost bored, as if what he was saying didn't carry the weight of my entire existence. "Oh yeah? I deleted it. We need to start over." Just like that. No warning. No explanation. No acknowledgement of the thousands of hours I had sacrificed. My brain couldn't process it. I remember staring at him, waiting for some kind of laugh. Just kidding. But it never came. The sound of people typing around me suddenly felt deafening. My hands were trembling on the desk. I wanted to scream, "Do you even know what you've done? Do you have any idea what this cost me?" But all I managed to do was sit there, frozen, while my chest pounded like it was trying to break free. It felt like someone had reached inside me and erased not just my work, but me. Every late night, every missed dinner, every moment I told myself, "This will be worth it," wiped out with a single careless decision. I remember gripping the edge of my desk so hard my knuckles turned white. The cursor blinked back at me on an empty screen, almost mocking me. And in that moment, I realized the work had defined me for so long, and now I didn't know who I was without it. That night, I didn't say a word to anyone. Not on the way home, not when I walked through my front door, not even when my phone buzzed with a friend asking if I was free to hang out. I just couldn't. The silence felt heavier than anything I could have explained out loud. I sat on the bus ride home, forehead leaning against the glass, watching the blur of streetlights smear into each other. My reflection looked like a stranger staring back at me, hollow-eyed, shoulders slumped, carrying something no one else could see. I wanted to cry, but nothing came out. Just this numbness that wrapped itself around me like a wet blanket I couldn't shake off. When I finally got home, the world around me kept moving like nothing had happened. Dishes clinked in the sink. A neighbor's TV echoed faint laughter through the walls. The faint smell of rain drifted in from the open window. Everything felt normal, except me. Inside, I felt like my chest was caving in. Flashbacks kept hitting me in waves. Times I almost quit, but told myself to keep pushing. Nights when my friends begged me to come out for a drink, and I'd said, maybe next time. Birthdays I missed, calls I ignored, just to chase this dream that apparently meant nothing. All those sacrifices suddenly replayed in my head like some cruel highlight reel that I wanted to tell someone, to unload what had just happened, but the words stuck in my throat. How could I even explain it? 2 years of my life just got deleted, and the person responsible acted like it was no big deal. It sounded ridiculous, almost unbelievable, even to me. So instead, I kept it inside. The silence that night wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating. And as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, I realized this was the first time in years I didn't know what tomorrow was supposed to look like. The days that followed felt strange, like I was walking through fog. On the surface, everything at work looked the same. People typing, phones ringing, the owner striding around like he owned the world. But for me, nothing looked the same anymore. Once you've seen how disposable you really are, you can't unsee it. I started noticing things I had ignored before. The way praise always came in the form of vague promises. We'll take care of you when the time comes. The way my ideas were sometimes repeated by the owner in meetings, word for word, as if they were his own. The way my hard work was treated like a stepping stone, never something to be celebrated. I thought back to little moments that hadn't registered at the time. Like the Christmas party where everyone got gift cards except me, because apparently I was already being rewarded with opportunity. Or the meeting where I was told to present my project, only for the owner to cut me off halfway and take over, as though I was just an intern fumbling through slides. At the time, I laughed it off, told myself it was no big deal. But now with everything gone, those memories hit me like knives. That it's wild how clear everything becomes once the illusion shatters. I realized I hadn't been valued. I'd been used. My dedication wasn't loyalty in their eyes, it was convenience. And I hated myself for not seeing it sooner. Walking into that office each day felt like sitting in a theater, watching a play I no longer believed in. Everyone else seemed to know their lines, nodding along, pretending the script made sense. But I couldn't buy into it anymore. The cracks were too wide, too obvious. And every time I caught the owner's eye, all I could think was, you took 2 years of my life, and you didn't even blink. There comes a moment when the weight gets too heavy to carry, and you realize you're standing at a crossroads. Keep breaking yourself apart to fit into a place that doesn't care, or finally let go. For me, that moment didn't come with fireworks. It wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, the kind of quiet that eats you alive. That I remember sitting at my desk one evening after everyone else had gone home. The office was still, except for the low hum of the vending machine and the ticking of the old wall clock. My screen glowed back at me with empty folders, a reminder of everything I had lost. My chest ached, not from exhaustion this time, but from the truth I was finally admitting to myself. I can't do this anymore. I thought about every sacrifice I had made. The times I brushed off phone calls from friends. The vacations I said no to because work needed me. The family dinners where my chair sat empty, my plate cold by the time I got home. I thought about the younger version of me, hopeful, driven, believing that hard work would always be rewarded, and I almost wanted to apologize to him. Because what had I gained? Sleepless nights, coffee-stained notebooks, and a boss who saw me as nothing more than a replaceable cog. The breaking point wasn't just about the work being deleted. It was about everything I had ignored leading up to that moment. The manipulation, the hollow promises, the way my worth had been slowly chipped away until I barely recognized myself that I stared at my reflection in the darkened window across from my desk. My own eyes looked back at me, tired and sunken, asking the question I had been too afraid to answer. Is this all you want your life to be? That was the night I realized something had to change. I didn't know how. I didn't know when. But I knew if I kept going like this, I'd lose myself completely. Life has a strange way of throwing you a lifeline just when you feel like you're drowning. Though sometimes it doesn't feel like rescue at first, more like a shock to the system. For me, it came in the form of a buzzing phone. I was slumped on my couch late one night. The room dark except for the dull glow of the TV I wasn't even watching. My phone lit up on the coffee table, vibrating against the wood. At first, I ignored it. Probably spam, or maybe another pointless notification. But then I saw the name. It wasn't anyone from my circle. It was a company name. A competitor. For a second, I thought it had to be a mistake. Why would they be calling me? My heart thudded as I picked up, half expecting some kind of cruel prank. But it wasn't. On the other end was a voice that said words I hadn't heard in so long. We've been following your work. We're impressed. We want to talk. I froze. My first reaction wasn't excitement. It was disbelief. Someone noticed me? Someone actually valued the work I thought had been erased from the world? I sat there in stunned silence, gripping the phone so tight my knuckles ached. Part of me wanted to laugh. Another part wanted to see RY.as the voice on the other end laid out what they admired. I found myself flashing back to those nights I thought my effort meant nothing. The nights I'd whispered to myself, maybe this is all pointless. Maybe no one will ever care. And now here was proof, undeniable proof, that my work did matter. That I mattered. The call wasn't long, but when it ended, I just sat there staring at the ceiling. My chest felt lighter than it had in months, maybe years. But tangled with that relief was fear. Because now I had a choice to make. The days after that call were some of the most conflicted of my life. On one hand, I felt a spark I hadn't felt in years, the thought that maybe, just maybe, I could finally step into something better. On the other hand, I was tied down by years of loyalty, fear, and that quiet voice that kept whispering, don't burn bridges. Don't make a mistake. You can't undo. I'd catch myself staring at the office walls, wondering if I could really walk away. After all, I had given this place 2 years of my life. 2 years of sweat, missed memories, and broken promises. Would leaving make all that sacrifice meaningless? Or was staying the real betrayal? The betrayal of myself? The competitors? Words echoed in my mind every night. We value what you've done. We see the potential in you. It was everything I had been starving to hear, yet somehow, it scared me. What if I wasn't as good as they thought? What if I left and failed? The what-ifs piled up until my head felt like it was splitting. That I'd sit on my bed late at night with my laptop closed, staring at the blank screen like it held all the answers. Flashbacks would flood in, my boss's hand clapping my back, telling me, good work, without ever giving me more. The empty chair at my family's table. The birthday candles I never got to blow out with my niece. Each memory weighed on me like a stone, tipping the scale further and further. One night, I actually whispered the words out loud to myself, just to hear how they sounded. I'm leaving. The syllables felt foreign, shaky, but freeing. And in that moment, I realized the choice wasn't really between loyalty and opportunity. It was between staying trapped in a cage that had already stolen too much of me, or finally opening the door to see what was outside. Still, knowing the right choice and having the courage to make it are two different things. And I wasn't sure. Yet if I had the strength, the day I finally decided to leave didn't feel like some grand, cinematic moment. There were no fireworks, no dramatic speeches. Just me, standing in that same office I had lived in for 2 years, staring at walls that had witnessed both my devotion and my breaking. That I remember packing my things into a small cardboard box. A couple of notebooks, a mug with a chipped handle, and a few pens that had somehow survived all those late nights. It wasn't much, but each item carried the weight of memories I couldn't forget. My hands shook as I placed the mug inside. I thought about all the nights I refilled it just to push myself through another hour, another project. It felt strange, almost cruel, how ordinary the moment looked while it felt like my entire world was shifting. The owner didn't even look up when I walked past his office. Maybe he didn't care, or maybe he just assumed I'd always be there. Part of me wanted to stop, to say everything I'd been holding in. You erased me. You used me. You took years of my life and tossed them aside like nothing. But instead, I just kept walking. I realized then that the real power wasn't in exploding or begging for acknowledgement. The real power was in leaving quietly, knowing I didn't owe them a single piece of me anymore. Walking out of that building for the last time, the air outside hit me like a wave. I stood there for a moment, box in my arms, watching people rush past on the street. Life kept moving, indifferent to my little revolution. But inside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom.it wasn't a clean kind of freedom. It hurt badly. I was grieving the years I'd lost, the version of myself I had given away. But underneath the sadness was a flicker of relief. Like chains being cut. Like I was finally stepping out of a prison I hadn't even realized I'd been in. I didn't smile as I walked away, not yet. But my steps felt heavier and lighter all at once. Heavier with the past I was carrying, lighter with the knowledge that I was finally choosing myself. Leaving that company wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning of something I didn't know I had been craving, the chance to rebuild myself. At first, though, it didn't feel like a new beginning. It felt like standing in the wreckage of a house I had built with my own hands, staring at the ruins and wondering if I'd made the biggest mistake of my life. The first few weeks were hard. I kept waking up at the same time, out of habit, my body still wired for long nights and endless deadlines. I'd reach for my laptop, only to remember I didn't owe anyone my time anymore. That realization was both terrifying and freeing. For the first time in years, the silence around me wasn't suffocating. It was mine that I started to look at those 2 years differently. Yes, the work was deleted. Yes, the recognition I craved never came. But the effort, the skills, the determination, those weren't erased. They were inside me, etched into who I had become. And when the competitors called again, not with just words, but with an actual offer, it hit me. My value couldn't be deleted. Not by a careless boss. Not by anyone. Flashbacks came, too, but they started to sting less. Instead of bitterness, I felt a kind of bittersweet acceptance. I remembered the long nights, the sacrifices, the exhaustion, but also the strength it took to survive them. And that strength was mine to keep. One morning, I sat at a new desk, not the old office, not the same glow of a dying desk lamp, but a fresh space with sunlight streaming through the window. I opened a blank notebook, the pages crisp, untouched. And for the first time in a long time, the emptiness in front of me didn't scare me. It felt like possibility that I'm not going to pretend I've figured everything out. Rebuilding takes time. But I know this much. Those 2 years weren't wasted. They taught me the hardest, most valuable lesson of all, that my worth isn't tied to someone else's recognition, and it definitely isn't something that can be deleted. And that, in its own way, feels like the real victory.